Hi, everyone, and welcome to CX Nexus, the podcast where we explore the intersections of everything related to customer experience. I'm your co host, Nicole Saunders, and I'm here with.
Chris Detzel.
Hey, Chris, how are you doing? It's good to see you.
It's good to see you. I'm pretty good. It's been a
Yeah,
while, huh?
it has been a while. We got to get our podcasting game rolling again. I think we're ready,
We
though.
do. I think we're ready. We're going to kick it off in the new year and be a little bit more consistent, I think.
Absolutely. Speaking of the new year, we're heading into the holidays,
Yep.
and that has had me thinking a lot lately about none other than community, right? The holidays are time we get together with friends and family. We maybe have a bunch of traditions and things we
Yeah.
do. And I was thinking the other day about how similar and parallel that is to the community building we do at work. So I was thinking a fun topic for us might be to talk about how we build community outside of work, because I know that you and I both have some different things that we run and facilitate. And it's really interesting to see what we've learned from work that we apply to some of those things. And also, I think to a certain extent, a lot of community builders are drawn to the positions or the field because we're natural connectors. We're people
Yeah.
that already do some of this stuff. We have some intuition around it. So I thought we could chat about that today. How's that sound?
I love it. And
Awesome.
it's funny that you say that is, I think that's true. And sometimes it's just in us. Like, I don't necessarily think of the strategy or tactics personally whenever I'm building these personal things. But then when I start thinking about that, I was like, oh, I could use this for my running community. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a lot of
So,
parallels there. So I know life is like this so often where you don't realize that you're on a path. It's the whole hindsight is 2020 thing. You start to see how those dots connect. And I've looked back over time and seen that even as early as high school or probably even as a kid, I was getting people together and figuring out
yeah.
like what motivated people to connect and how to keep people engaged. And it's just because that's how I wanted to make friends or how I wanted to do activities and things. But so you're a runner in your
Yeah.
personal life, which is super cool. I know that you do that, a lot of that kind of stuff. And you have built a community in Dallas-Fort Worth around
Yeah.
running. Tell us a little bit about that, like how that came up, what motivated you to do it, that sort of thing.
Yeah, we can start from the beginning if you want. So
Yeah.
back 11, 12 years ago, I lived in this little town called Little Elm. Now it's not so
Hmm.
little anymore, but and I started running. My brother, I think I was going through a divorce and stuff like that, and I've got a twin brother, and he was big time into running. He goes, Chris, you really need to lose some weight. You know?
Thanks, bro.
Yeah. And he goes, divorces can be really stressful and all these things, right? And I used to run before that, like years and years ago before that. And so I was like, yeah, he's right. So I took him up on that and I started running around the neighborhood and I'm like, man, it sure would be nice to have somebody to run with.
Yeah.
And and so I created this Facebook group and it was called Frisco Ranch Running Group or whatever. And I was just bringing people in within the community, like within that area that lived next to me. That's all it was. And so I started running with people there. It was just like 4 or 5 people, and we did some things. And then I moved to Dallas. Like, and I left it alone for a while, and I thought, and I started getting into running groups and things. And I thought, you know what? Why not open this up to all of Dallas-Fort Worth? Let's just see what happens. And because what happens with when you get into running groups, you have a specific pace that you run, right? For example, if I'm a half marathon runner, I could be a 130 runner, I could be a 140, 150, 2 hours, 210, etc. And a lot of times that you start building that relationship just with those runners within
Mm,
that group. And that's good. That's a good community of people that are doing similar paces that you are and things like that. But I was doing that for a long time, and I was like, I'm not really getting to know any of the other runners that are faster or
right.
slower or whatever. Right? So I opened it up, and it started to grow like crazy. Now there's about 10,000 plus
Oh
people
my
in
goodness.
within that. It doesn't sound like a lot. It's just DFW. Like it's not
I
open
think
up
it
to the
sounds like a
world.
ton.
And it has grown. And it in this particular group, I don't meet these people on site necessarily. It's all a digital group. There are other Facebook groups that they meet every week and do these things.
Mhm.
Now I do meet with other runners, we meet every week and things like that. And it's really fun. But so I manage this group and then I do use a lot of the tactics to drive engagement now. Now I think of, hey, you got to post. People got to know who you are a little bit. You got to post every now and then and things like that. And I have.
Yeah, you got
And
to be
then
consistent. You got to be human. Share
got to be
something that
human.
is compelling to people, right? If you just got in there every day and said, "Hey, I'm Chris. I'm a runner. I'm going for a run this day,"
No,
people would be like, "Okay." But I'm sure you share other things about yourself, right?
Yeah, you do. And for example, like coming up is a big marathon in Dallas. It's called BMW Run Dallas. So it's the big marathon, half marathon on Sunday, and then there's a 5K and 10K on Saturday. And so there's lots of questions being asked about that marathon. Hey, when do I pick up my bib? It's all on the website, but the people are asking questions that are already
Yeah.
there, or they want to transfer their bibs and stuff like that. It's not allowed. And so you try to partner with some of these big marathon groups and and help them out because people are asking on your group and stuff.
Right.
There's lots of questions on there. And
So you're
one
finding
of the
help, you're being a resource, and it looks like
exactly.
you're volunteering for some of these other organizations to help disseminate information. That's great.
Yeah.
Talk
When
about
people
being
are
an
like, oh,
advocate, right?
there's probably lots of opportunity when you think of potential like the or Run Dallas Marathon could maybe help you later, with your podcast or whatever. So I did just start a podcast around that group, knowing that
Awesome.
I had that. And I also have a website called Dallas or DFWRunningGroup.com. And then I have another website called TFWRunningTalk.com, which is the podcast. And it's all together, right? And we'll talk to local runners, local running group kind of folks, or even I'll talk to race directors. I just talked to one of the lead people that Run Dallas, right? He's been very much of a local runner in Dallas. He's won Dallas Marathon. It's bringing more content into the group and getting to know some of those local people is really part of that goal. And it's just what I do on the side,
Yeah.
So
But it's so funny as you're describing this, I'm thinking of, like you said, like all these things parallels with work, right? We just called out
yeah,
some of those tactics and pieces, but it's really interesting how you're building a little bit of what we would call a network effect, where
yeah,
you were like, oh, I've got all these people and we're having conversations. Why don't we do a podcast and share those conversations with other people?
yeah,
And that gives you a platform where now you can be like, oh, let's invite some of the elite runners to come be guests on
that's
the
right.
podcast. And now you're giving access, which is a key strategy, to
Hmm.
your community members to these people. And that's going to continue to expand the interest and drive the engagement. And I'm sure you're not sitting here on Sunday mornings like plotting out, like, oh, and if I do this, then I can get these members. It's just what is evolving organically. But I think that's
Yeah.
why it works, right?
But I
Because
think you
these
have
are
to
the
be
things that just
bold
make
sometimes.
sense. You do.
Exactly. You have to
Absolutely.
be
Yeah.
bold. If we have guests on this podcast or you have it on you've got to, hey, I don't know this elite runner. We're Facebook friends or whatever. Just reach out to
Yeah.
them. Hey, you want to be on this
Yep.
podcast? And generally they say yes.
Most of us are pretty
So
excited to get
yeah,
invited to do things. And it's the old rule of most of the time, if you ask somebody to do something for you, they're
they'll
going
do
to
it.
want to say yes. They're going to be compelled to help you out. And especially if it's something like being on a podcast where they get to be in the spotlight or on the bike themselves, right? That's an exciting thing for people. So that's so cool. So you've really built up this big community of runners. What kinds of impacts are you seeing for other people that are engaging?
I think really the big goal here is that, you know, running is something that helps you with your health. It
Yeah.
helps you when I go for a run or a 5 or 6 mile run. I start thinking about innovative things, whether it's for work or whether it's personal, whether it's like it gets those kind of juices going a little bit and it's just healthy. And so, when you run or exercise in general, it's just going to help you. And really, it's just about healthy living and helping people to be more consistent in their exercise. So that's
Yeah.
really all it's about. People have questions about what they should wear or, what races are good or, there's all kinds of different questions that you can answer. And to me, spotlighting some of those could be elite athletes or some of those running clubs or race directors that are putting on these races just helps emphasize why people are doing this so consistently. So that's really the goal of that entire there is a goal. And to me
Right.
it's like it's all about consistency. What
Yeah.
for this instance it's running, but it doesn't have to be just running. What are you doing for cross training? Are you doing weights? Are you doing core work? Are you
And I would bet you that out of that community, people have made friends.
Yeah,
Maybe they've made connections that will result in jobs or relationships or other things. And that's one of the things that I love about community is we can never really know. There's this
yeah,
whole ripple effect of connectivity that happens. I think it also gets at that fundamental piece that like humans are just wired for connection. It's
that's right.
more fun to go do things when there's somebody else there. And that's no shade on the introverts or the people that like doing stuff solo. I like taking myself to a movie by my all alone now and then, but I think that there is
Well,
sort of
the
natural desire to
introverts,
connect, right?
that's right. The introverts want to connect too. They're
Too,
people.
just with
But,
a smaller group of people.
yeah, look, I just talked to this really fast runner. And he runs like a 2:28-ish kind of marathon, right? So
Hmm.
his goal this weekend is to run a 1:10 half marathon. It's really fast. And he's elite, not elite of the elite, but he's an elite.
Yeah.
And he's an engineer. And he's been part of this one community called White Rock Running Co-op within the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And you could tell he's an introvert. He's still part of a community that he goes to
Yeah.
some of their runs, not always. And he likes to do some stuff on his own. At that level, most of those guys are girls, whatever. But so I think we all want some of that community building. Now, we talked before this, and you're also doing some community work as well,
Yeah.
within your, in your personal life. I want to hear more about that.
So my favorite story that I love to tell is it actually goes back a while all of a sudden. I'm not going to say how many years, but when I graduated from college, I had moved back to my hometown. And I knew one or two people in the area, but not a lot. And I was working at the university, but I was mostly working with professors that were a lot older than me. And I was trying to figure out, I was like, oh my gosh, this is my first year not having school as a place to make friends.
Mm.
How do you make friends? And I see this all the time. Like I look at my local subreddit and there's constantly people in there being like, how do I make friends? How do I meet people with common interests? What do I do? And so I was trying to figure this out. And I was like, how did I make friends in school? I would run into people in class. And so I had a
Hmm.
place where I was running into people consistently at random.
Yeah.
And we had a common thing to talk about, which was the class, right? We could talk about the material or the teacher
Yeah.
or the people in the class. There's a given topic where we didn't have to have anything in common, but we had that thing. And over time, you'd chat about that thing. And then eventually, maybe you'd say, hey, we should get together and study about the class outside of it.
Yeah.
And you do that for a while. And then maybe you'd start to explore other things that you had in common. And that was how you would develop friends. And this is oversimplifying it, but there's a pattern there, right? There's a gist to it. And so, okay, so if I want to,
That's when you had to work for building relationships.
right?
It's a lot harder
And so
back then.
if I want to make friends, if I want to connect with people, what do I need? I need a consistent place where people can
Yep.
connect on a regular basis. There needs to be something for people to talk about to break the ice and give them something in common if they don't have a ton in common naturally. And I constantly need new people coming in,
Yep.
right? Because just like you were saying, if you're only running with the runners that run at your pace, you're not necessarily learning from the people that are more advanced or helping the people that are less advanced or whatever. And with a community
Yeah.
of friends, you need new people coming in. And so I was like, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I was also fresh out of college. So I was like, I need something cheap and easy to do.
Yeah.
I was like, I could host dinner parties at my house. That doesn't cost me much. It's just some food and cleaning my apartment.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, I'm going to
Which is
host,
never fun, but still.
but it was good. It helped me keep my apartment clean, right? So I was like, I'm going to host a potluck because then everybody will bring the food. So I don't have to provide everything. And that becomes the theme. We could all talk about the food, right? The
Yeah.
weird, interesting things that people have brought. If you have nothing else to talk about, we could talk about what food showed up. And I was like, all right, I'm going to do it every other week because every week felt like too much, but once a month didn't seem consistent enough to get people to remember
Yeah.
each other month to month. And so I decided odd numbered Tuesdays and I called it the Odd Tuesday Potluck. And so every
Mm.
odd numbered Tuesday, I would invite everyone I knew, which started out with three people, and I would tell them each that they could bring one friend. It could be their roommate, their
Perfect.
cousin, their significant other, whatever. They could bring one friend. And so the first week I had 4 or 5 people, and I knew two of them. So I met a couple people. And then the next week, some of those people came back, and some different people came and they brought friends. And I just had this very consistent. And over time, you started to see who kept showing up on a regular basis and who was making connections. And I ran the Odd Tuesday potluck for something like 10 years. But out of that, I met most of my best friends that I am still friends with
That's pretty cool.
decades later. A lot of them were in my wedding. I know of at least two couples that formed by meeting out of
Yep.
that circle of friends, or maybe we would have the potlucks and sometimes you'd
Hmm.
have a party and people would connect there and that kind of thing. I've seen people
That's
get
awesome.
jobs, and it was just totally a natural thing, right? Of just like, how do I connect people and meet them and bring them together?
Hmm.
And it really literally built a community over time. And that was like, I always look back on that because it was just the most sort of organic grassroots community building there was.
Yeah.
But if you think about it in terms of the strategies and tactics we think about at work, what did I have? I had consistency,
Yep.
I had a ritual, I
Yes.
had a system for constantly bringing new people in. Didn't require any gamification or anything, right? We didn't have to
Well, the gamification
recognize
is,
and
hey, we're gonna
reward
have a
people.
potluck. You know,
But the
food.
reward for people over time was
Yep.
they had friends, they had a place to go, they got to try new food, they got to
Yep.
experiment new things. The other key that I did with that is I said we could not watch TV or play video games. Board games were okay. But yeah, and this was honestly back before most of us had smartphones, but
Just had the regular
it was
phone.
critical. The critical thing was I think I had a Razor phone back then, so it wasn't a smartphone. I had a
I had one
cell,
of those. It's
but I
fun.
was like T9 texting. But it was all about connection. And the focus was
Yeah.
like, I don't want us to do any activities that are going to exclude anyone. So it has to be things that help people engage. And so that was really fun. And yeah, I do. I think about that a lot and kind of what made that work and what lessons I learned from that that I can bring into all of my community building work. A different way that I do community is I do a lot of music. I'm in a choir. Out of that choir, I've now formed an a cappella group. And so we have that kind of going on. And that has been really interesting to see too. Again, it's a place where we meet up on a regular basis.
Did you want to sing a song real quick? Because I want to hear that voice.
I do not right
Oh,
now.
okay. Dang it.
It is Friday morning. I'm not warmed up. You'll get me singing one of these days. Maybe I'll
All
do a
right.
new theme
All
song
right.
for us in the spring.
I'll have to remember this.
I do have my guitar right here. It's actually
Hmm.
shocking how many people in meetings are like, "You gonna play a song for us?" I'm like, "What? That would be super weird."
That would be weird.
You don't want to do that right now. But in thinking about that music, again, there's a regular place to show up. We have a
Yeah.
common thing, which is the music. There's always new people joining the group every season. And that's a group that I've been in for many years now, too, and gotten to know people. And a lot of those folks are now my friends. And so I think that there's a lot of lessons to be learned in. I think so much of building community is around consistency.
100%.
If you don't have that consistency, it's a challenge. And it's just like you said this right at the top when you're talking about your Facebook group. What do I have to do? I need to post consistently. I need to let people
Yep.
know I'm here. We need to have some things. We need to have some sort of, we talk about them as rituals a lot in the community industry, but like just consistent things that happen that people can count on. And one of the things that I've really noticed, sometimes you can do things for a long time before people show up. One of my other things is I teach a dance class on Zoom.
You do
And
a lot of
this
stuff.
I do. I have a lot of energy.
No doubt.
Part of it too is I try to like by teaching the dance class, like that's also just my workout, right? So it's
Yeah.
fills two
It helps.
purposes, but
But that's why I run is same thing
exactly,
as
right? It's community and
it's community and
an
I get to stay in
interest.
shape, you
Yeah,
know?
exactly. And this is something that started during COVID. My company at the time did this thing where they were having each of us allowing us to all teach classes to each other as a sort of social connection. And my group is just still going. And what's been interesting is to see over time, sometimes there are people that are on my email list for months, maybe even years. And then all of a sudden,
They show up.
something shifts and they join.
Yeah.
And so that's the other key to consistency. And I know a lot when we're talking about community building at work, it's always like, how do we get more people in? How do we get them more
Yeah.
engaging? And it's you just keep offering stuff. And yeah, you want to adjust as needed to make sure you're serving the interests and needs of your community. But it is amazing sometimes how long people need to see that consistency happening before they're like, I really should jump in, or I'm
Yeah.
ready to, or I need
That's
this now.
that's the hard part, right? Is it's not necessarily for us being consistent because we already know that if we build a webinar program or we're pushing out good content on the community, whether it's Q&A or whatever it is, right? Sometimes you have the business saying, "Hey, we want more. What else can you do? What else can you do?" It's like we're doing a lot, but you know, and there are programs for people want to do things in different ways, but what's going to get us the most bang for our buck? And let's be consistent at that. It will grow and then
Yeah.
we'll introduce something later. You know what I mean? But it's hard to think about it in those terms because the business wants something now. What else can we do? Oh my God, I don't see
What's
any
new?
posts. I'm like,
Well, and I do think it's one of the
chill out.
challenges that faces a lot of
It's like,
community organizations. You and I've talked in the past about how sometimes it's educating up and managing up that,
yeah,
hey, it's going to take like years of doing
years.
this on a consistent basis to really build that thriving community. And I think,
That's right.
so many business leaders, we talk about this all the time. Everybody looks at Salesforce Trailblazers. That program has been around for 20 plus years. That is why it
Exactly.
is so successful, is they have consistently delivered the things that they delivered on. Of course, they've built and they have grown, but
Yep.
it's that it's existed for a long time. And I think a lot of businesses tend to think of community a little bit like social media back before everything was paid, where it's like, oh, we'll just do this thing and it'll go viral and it'll get a whole bunch of engagement really quickly. And it's actually something it takes a long time to really build up that threshold and build that trust that we are going to continue to be here. We're going to continue to deliver this. This is something you can count on. And again, people frequently only join these things when they need it, and they might not need it right when you launch it.
That's right. I think that That is exactly right. As I think of runners in general, people have lives, so they could be consistent for the next 2 years and just show up to every run, or be very consistent in posting and things like that. But then maybe they have kids, maybe they go through a
Right.
divorce, maybe they're getting married,
Maybe they
whatever.
get an injury,
Get another
like,
job, they get an injury.
uh,
Life happens. Same thing with B2B communities. Maybe
mhm.
these people switch jobs. Maybe they got into a project for the next year that is just keeping them focused and busy, not on the topic of what the community is trying to bring. And then they come back, maybe, right? Or,
Maybe
I've
both
had,
of the podcast hosts get new jobs and they can't do
yeah,
episodes for a few months.
it gets tough sometimes. Exactly. That's just real life. And that's what the hard thing about keeping it consistent is you got to continue to bring people in and
Yeah.
have those consistent things and that people like, and then just they'll come back. Maybe they won't. Who knows? If their job changes and they're doing something completely different, they don't even have your service or your product, then they're probably not gonna engage anymore.
Yeah, no, it's important to remember. Think about that as we go into the holidays. A lot of families and organizations and things have traditions.
Yeah,
Why do we have those traditions? Because they're touchstones that help
yeah.
us feel that sense of consistency, feel that sense of connection through time. Do you have any big traditions or things that you're looking forward to this holiday?
I feel like traditions have changed. I used to, from a personal standpoint, we'd get together with a ton of my family and things like that, and that's dispersed a little bit. Now,
Hmm.
me and my wife, and if I have my son on that, which we will, we'll probably go see some movies and do some dinners. I've got a twin brother. We'll probably go to his house because he lives right up the road. He has kids. I have a 14-year-old, and he has a 14-year-old and a 12, 13-year-old, and so they like to hang out and do things. And so we'll just do those kinds of things. Is that what you meant? Did you mean the community?
Yeah, I mean anything. I know my husband and I have been trying to figure out like what we want our holiday traditions to be going forward.
Yeah.
And like one of the ones I've been doing is I like making apple scones on Christmas morning.
Hmm.
So I've been trying to do that every year. A regular thing to look forward to. And
That sounds
I
good.
so I don't make those scones a lot of other times during the year. So like a special thing that's just
Yeah.
associated with the holiday for us.
We'll get like a thing for the tree, an ornament for the tree. We'll get three of
Hmm.
them. So my son, me, and Leah will get three ornaments that we'll pick out every year. Maybe it's a theme, or maybe it's just, yeah, I'll just pick this ornament. But that's always been a tradition, probably for 6, 7, 8 years. I don't know,
I
maybe
love
even,
that. And then
yeah,
you can look back at your tree each year and look at those memories and
that's right.
remember.
Like we went to, or during COVID, there's these ornaments that have these kind of, there's this one ornament that has toilet paper on it and says something about, you remember, wow, because when we were going through it, we are like,
Yeah.
this is going to be something that is hopefully never happens again,
Right,
you
right.
know? And, but it's something to remember because it was such, for 2 years, it was just
Yeah.
kept us all at home and just scared and whatever. The whole world. It wasn't just, the state of Texas. It was like the world.
Everything. Yeah.
And so I think that you can remember some of the things that happened. Like Texas Rangers won the World Series last year, or year before, whatever. I bought a Texas Rangers ornament, like a hat that says T for Texas. Point is, I remember, hey, they won the World Series once, something like that.
I love picking up ornaments when I travel and I try to pick one big trip a year.
Yeah,
So like I went on a business trip to London this year and it's the first time I'd been there in a long time. So I
yeah,
got a little London ornament. That was my one for this year and things like that. And again, we're just talking about traditions within the micro communities of our families.
yeah.
But if you think about that more broadly, I'm thinking about our big user conference coming up and what's an
Mm,
annual thing we can do that people can look forward to and have some kind of artifact from that they look at year over year. Like at the conference I did last year, we did this Lego wall where people could make little like Lego avatars of themselves. And we were like, this could be a really cool tradition where every year people
yeah,
come build their avatar and over time they're going to build up a little collection from going to the conference every year. It's going to be something they're going to look forward
something they
to,
remember.
a touch point for them. And
And you could push the stuff like that on social, right? Say,
oh,
oh, look at
totally. Yeah.
so and you push it as a tradition, right? Like
Hmm.
it's a way better social post than look at my brand, read my blog.
Yeah, or here's a
You know what I
picture of a
mean?
bunch of
Like
people standing in a hallway at a conference center.
this is now showing your brand, but real life people doing some traditional thing that
Yep,
probably get more likes and replies than just remembrance.
totally. I love this conversation. I love thinking about
You do.
the mirrors of how we build community in our personal lives and how we can apply those things to work and vice versa. And I think it really helps me when I reflect on those things to remember what is organic about community building and
Mm.
what is actually meaningful to people. Because we can get into strategies and tactics and
Yep.
frameworks and marketing all day long.
And we
But
have.
at the end of, we have, and we will continue to do.
Hmm.
But it is important to get back to the heart of it and
Yeah.
like, why is this meaningful for people? And why do we do this? And why does it work? And it works because of that personal connection that people can make.
It's all about the connections, and it just seems so obvious to me, but I don't know that it is obvious. Like when you go talk to the business or whatever, personalized connections, doing similar things together and helping each other overcome some of the challenges and helping each other. This is the basics of community management, and it's core to human behavior. And so bringing those people together and making some of those things happen to get them help they need, or just that peer person that understands, like, all right, so let's say you're a data person or a
Yeah.
salesperson, and you're talking about what you do to your family member or somebody outside of sales or outside of data. Do you think does that person even care about what you do? No. So you go to somebody and you talk about data that is doing data things or sells things, and they're interested because they're learning. Oh yeah, that's runners. If you're not a runner, you don't care about running. You don't care about the things you have to wear. You don't care about the pace. You don't care about whatever. But if you are with other runners that do care, you have something similar to talk about. It's just normal kinds of things. And that will help grow, whether it's a running community or a business B2B community. Just helps. It's just logical. You build those programs to get them engaged, and whether it's forums or on-site things or events or whatever. To me, it's just
Yeah.
like, sorry, you got me on I feel like this should never end. I'm that passionate about community, and it's just very logical to me. Yes, I'm in it all day, every day, and I don't know that I'm biased because I think it's true. Like I believe with all my heart,
Well, yeah, it just
a
goes back to
fact.
that connection piece, right? And like at the end of the day, it's what we all need. And it's something that I think we all hear about how much that's missing in
Yeah.
society more broadly. There's a real hunger for people to be able to make those connections and not just lightweight connections like a Facebook friend or following somebody on TikTok, but genuine connections where you've got relationships over time. And like you said, I love the point you made about helping people overcome challenges. I reflect often on the fact that sometimes when something bad happens, really the thing that brings a community together, right? Like how often
Yeah.
do we see something terrible happen and that's when everybody like comes together and starts to build community pride and works together to overcome that challenge. And that's a really interesting thing. You even called out when we were talking about like our own traditions the COVID lockdown period of time. And that was something we were all in together. And while we weren't necessarily connecting, I think there was a sense of connectedness in that we were all going through this challenge and we were all coming up with solutions. I know my job, we were all sharing on Slack how we were setting up our home offices and how we were dealing with
Yeah.
different things.
So it
And
was
it
community in a
felt,
digital way, more
yeah, it
so.
felt really
People were
good
getting on Zoom calls
bonding.
more, and that's where Zoom just took off, I think.
Oh, totally.
I
And
mean,
so I think it's like, not that you should fabricate challenges, but don't necessarily feel threatened by them, right?
yeah,
When something comes up, with your community, it's actually a great opportunity for everybody to come together and problem solve together. And at the end of the day, that's where those deepest connections come from is when people get together and solve a problem. And that's why, again, online communities are so sticky because people run into challenges with the software that they're using or whatever they're trying to engage with on a day to day basis. And when they can connect with other people and overcome that challenge together and help each other through it, it's not just good for the business, it's great for the people that experience that whole thing.
100%. I'll give you one example, and I know we have to wrap it up, but is on my running community with those folks, there's always challenges with some people. People will just say crazy things because they have these opinions. This one community member had an issue with one of the race directors, right? And he posted about this big issue and said, look, this guy believes this way, and it becomes a little bit more personal, right? In those kind of communities. And he was saying all these negative things, and the community members, like, I was getting messages directly saying, Chris, you need to do something about this. And I was like, oh, I'm sitting there working. And I look and I was like, oh man, there's 50 different comments about it. And just kept going on and on. And so point is the community came and said, why are you posting this? Why are you even on this? Why are you saying this on this community? The guy's known as a runner and stuff like that. But so I had to go in and do all the moderation and all that stuff. But point is they came together saying you shouldn't be doing this and sending me messages, hey, 10 people, please take this off and moderate it and all this stuff. And it was a hard thing to do because now I'm getting messages because I took him off and did these things. But point is like the community came together. They spoke. They told me what I should do as the admin of that community. But the point is like, that's what happens. I loved it.
Yeah,
Just
I love
bring that
that
up.
story. All
Well,
right, it's time to wrap up, but I wish you a happy holiday. And for our audience, we've got a lot more to come in the new year, so stay tuned.
all right. Thanks, everyone. And please don't forget to rate and review us.
Yes, indeed. We love those likes. We love those reviews. It's what helps spread the word about the podcast.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Take care.